من حاربكم ووليا لمن والاكم وعدوا لمن عاداكم إلى يوم القيامة. لتعجيل فرج صاحب الأمر وإمام الزمان ومحور عالم الإمكان سيدنا ومولانا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري، صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. There seems to be a very prominent role played by the Christians in particular with regards to the tragedy of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. You'll notice that there were followers and companions of the Imam who would join his journey, convert to his school of thought, and lay their lives for his sake. It's difficult enough to understand how a person would relinquish their old and adopted religion, the religion of their forefathers, a religion that they've inherited from their parents, give all that up in order to embrace a whole new religion within a matter of seconds. These are people who never really had any research performed. They never studied courses of comparative religion. They never went through an exhaustive process of trying to understand Islam and the difference it has with Christianity. And so for them to abandon their old religion and embrace that of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is difficult enough to understand, let alone laying their lives for the Imam, let alone sacrificing themselves for this person who has just become the source of their inspiration. It's really strange how Wahab, for instance, his mother, his wife, this newly wedded family, they both get killed, the husband and the wife, in the way of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. You all know the story, I don't want to go there. But when you have a man who says to his wife that I'm leaving in order to be sacrificed for the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, his wife begs him not to go. He turns around and says to her that I have to go. I cannot bear to see the Imam lonely in the middle of the desert, surrounded by these wolves, as the Imam calls them. كَأَنِّي بِأَوْصَالِي, it's as though I can see my flesh. تُقَطِّعُهَا عُسْلَانُ الْفَلَوَاتِ. Uslan is a word that refers to a wild beast, particularly a wolf. Wolves and foxes are different from other animals such as lions, for instance, because a lion would come and eat to its heart's content. A lion attacks a herd of sheep, a flock of sheep, eats one or two, leaves the rest to live. Whereas a fox, and I've seen this myself, a fox attacks a bunch of chickens, for instance, in somebody's home, and they seem to kill each and every last one of them, even though he only needs to eat one. A wolf is exactly the same. The Imam says, it's as though I can see my flesh being torn apart by these wild beasts of the desert who fill up their stomachs with my flesh and their insides with my blood. So he says to his wife, Wahab says, I'm going. You're free to leave. And then all of a sudden she says to him, قَاتِلْ دُونَ الطَّيِّبِينَ حَتَّى تُقْتَلْ. Go fight in the protection of these noble ones, the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet. So he runs back to her. What happened to you? You were just telling me not to fight, and now you're saying I need to go and fight until I'm killed? قالت لا تلمني يا وهب. Don't blame me. فإن واعية الحسين قد كسرت قلبي. For the call of Hussein that I just heard broke my heart. What did he say? سمعته ينادي ألا هل من ناصر ينصرنا لوجه الله ألا هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله. Go and fight until you get killed. He goes, gets killed. She comes over to him. Habibi Wahab, you have just been guaranteed entrance into paradise. لَقَدْ ضَمِنْتَ الْجَنَّةِ. And I wish for God to allow me to join you very soon. And it's at that moment that Umar ibn Sa'd says one of his slaves to strike her with an iron rod over her head, killing her immediately, joining her husband in paradise. This is a Christian family. You have many other anecdotes, many other stories of Christians. And I think the only way to explain it is this. When a Christian meets Imam al-Hussein and embraces his faith, he's not converting from one religion to another. What he's doing is to revert from Christianity to the true Christianity. Let me give you an example. If you leave out the theology in the Christian religion, the theology is what? The very foundation of Christian theology is the Trinity, to believe in the triune God, that God is three and one at the very same time. So this theology is extremely complex. In fact, Christian theologians and philosophers have found it extremely difficult to explain it. If you ask any of them, please explain it to me logically, they'll say, you know what, it's not about logic, it's not about reason, it's about faith. You accept it, you let Jesus into your heart, and then Jesus is going to come to your rescue. He's going to help you. He's going to strengthen your faith. So don't use logic, don't use mathematics, don't use physics to try and explain how God could be one and three at the same time. Because we all know that that's contradictory to logic. We all know how that's antithetical to the most basic notions of mathematics. A 3-year-old child could tell you that 3 does not equal 1 and 1 doesn't equal 3. So they say you need to resort back to faith. And there is a philosophical basis in history where the very schism between the Catholic Church, the Christian Church, and the academic circles in the Renaissance, it actually started with René Descartes and other prominent philosophers saying that there is no way you could reconcile between reason and faith. Science and religion. These two things are inherently antithetical to one another. It's impossible to combine the two. Some of them were a little more accommodating, some of them were a little more understanding of the sentiments of the general public, so they tried to make it sound as though, well, religion has its own sphere and science has its own sphere. Others were very clear on the fact that science and religion can never be reconciled, they can never be accommodated in the same plane because they're antithetical to one another. So moving on, Christian theology aside, Christianity is about Jesus. And Jesus is about what? Christians would tell you. It's about love. Now we have a hadith that says, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Let me try and go through these steps one after the other to try and reach that conclusion in the end. The hadith says, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Adopt the morals of God. What are the morals of God? The morals of God include His infinite generosity. The fact that He is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. He is merciful and compassionate. He is merciful to everyone and anyone. As long as you're a creature of God, He bestows His mercy upon you. يا من يعطي من سأله يا من يعطي من لم يسأله ومن لم يعرفه تحننا منه ورحمة. Oh, He who gives to the one who asks Him. Let me open 2 parentheses here. When God says, "Ud'uni astajib lakum," the hadith says that not a single dua is ever left unanswered. Now you might be sitting there thinking, well, I did wish for a Ferrari this Christmas, I didn't get it. Or I did wish for, actually better than a Ferrari, a Bugatti Veyron, a $3 million car, the fastest in the world. I didn't see that in my Christmas stockings. I prayed, but I didn't get everything I want. Well, the hadith then elaborates. The hadith says that every dua is answered, except the answer comes in different forms. So there are three possibilities. Number one, either you get what you asked for. You'll get that Bugatti Veyron parked outside your car. Your dad's going to come and hand you the keys. Unlikely, but it's possible. Two, the second possibility is that God gives you something that is in your best interest. A Bugatti Veyron is going to make you proud, and in all likelihood, it'll become your life. It'll take over your entire life if you don't end up getting involved in a lethal, deadly accident. But it'll become your life. A single scratch on the car is going to give you a heart attack because it's worth $3 million. And so if anything happens to it, it'll be a complete disaster. Whereas if you had an old clunker, you wouldn't care that much, would you? Hence why we need to lessen and loosen our connections to this material world, so that when we let go and leave it all behind, it doesn't hurt as much. I was saying this to a group of brothers the other night. I said, imagine if you lose your shoe. You walk out of here and somebody's taken your shoes. Hopefully that doesn't happen in this community, but in some communities it does. How upset would you get? Even though all you've lost is just a pair of old shoes that aren't worth much. But you get upset because you've lost something that belongs to you. If you lose your phone, you're going to get really upset, even though it's only worth $200-300. So imagine if at the time of death, you lose everything. I'm not talking about a pair of shoes or a cell phone. I'm talking about everything. Hence the importance of giving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, God says in the Quran, صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ تُزَكِّيهِمْ وَتُطَهِّرُهُمْ بِهَا. Take from their money because that purifies them. It allows them to grow. It makes them less attached to the materialistic world. وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ صَلَاتَكَ سَكَنٌ لَهُمْ, which is why the hadith says that they would bring khums and zakat to the Prophet would take it, and then he would say, Allahumma salli ala fulan wa ala ali fulan. The Prophet sending his blessings upon the ones who give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to the Prophet himself. The Prophet would take it and put it where it's supposed to go. The point here isn't about where the money goes. The point here is about the fact that I have loosened those connections and those attachments to this world. Moving on. So it's about infinite generosity. God gives to anyone who asks him. Ud'uni astajib lakum is either you getting what you asked for, or you getting something that is in your best interest, or the hadith says, ذُنُوبٌ تُغْفَرُ لَهُ. If nothing, my sins are forgiven because I have asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can ask him for a Bugatti Veyron. If I don't get that or any other car because I'm only 12 years old, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will purify me. He will make me a better, more spiritual human being. So every dua is accepted, every dua is answered, which is why we always need to pray. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْعَبْدَ الْمِلْحَاحِ, the hadith says. To pray and pray insistently. Insist on God. Not that we deserve anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but when you want something, insist. God loves for that to happen. So moving on. يَا مَنْ يُعْطِي مَنْ سَأَلَهُ يَا مَنْ يُعْطِي مَنْ لَمْ يَسْأَلْهُ. He who gives to the one who does not ask him. But there's a step even further from that. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْرِفْهُ. And the one who doesn't even know him. تَحَنُّنًا مِنْهُ وَرَحْمَةً. The Christian who embraces the faith of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein hasn't really relinquished his religion. He has met a person who embodies all the virtues of Jesus Christ, the Son of the Virgin Mary of Nazareth, in the most noble ways. He embraces a person who completes that picture. He embraces a man and submits to a man like Abu Abdullah, who is way ahead of that time. Let me give you an example of that. Again, to go back to the hadith that I mentioned, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Why is it that when we talk about Imam al-Hussein, we say, Assalamu alayka ya thar Allah wa ibn tharih. He is the vengeance of God. Thar is when, say for instance, God forbid, someone kills your father. you become the one who holds vengeance. You're the one who is supposed to either forgive or receive compensation. It becomes a right that you own and no one else owns. In the case of Imam al-Hussein, God is the one who holds that vengeance. God is the one who is to avenge the blood of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, which is why the hadith says, again in the ziyarah of the Imam, As-salamu alayka ya qatil Allah. If you think about this, we have a lot of martyrs who were killed in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. What happened to these martyrs? They would be killed for the sake of God's religion. They would be killed for the sake of morality and ethics. They would be killed for the sake of a higher cause. That's all true. But in the case of Imam al-Hussein, he was killed for the sake, not for the sake of God's religion or morality or virtues or anything of that matter. He was killed for the sake of God himself. As-salamu alayka ya qatil Allah wabna qatileh. So, Imam al-Hussein is the next step up from what Christians know of Jesus of Nazareth, from what Jews know of Moses. He's the next step up because he is the embodiment of the hadith that I mentioned, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. For example, the hadith says that one day Ibrahim al-Khalil عليه وعلى نبينا وآله أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم اللهم صل على محمد. He would never eat alone because the hadith says ملعون ملعون من أكل الطعام وفي الطعام ما يكفي لإثنين من أكل الطعام وحده وفي الطعام ما يكفي لإثنين. Cursed is the one, cursed meaning that he is driven away from God's mercy, who eats a meal all by himself while there is enough food for two people or more. So Prophet Ibrahim would never eat alone. If he had someone, a guest, a family member, they'd eat together. If he didn't, he'd go outside, stand by the door, and wait for any person passing by to invite him over and join him for food. So the hadith says that he went outside one day, he's waiting, a total stranger passes by. He says to him, would you care to join me for food? He said, sure. So he comes inside, he sits down. Just before they're about to start, Ibrahim says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The stranger doesn't mention God's name. He grabs the food and starts eating straight away. Ibrahim says to him, why didn't you mention God's name? Say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. The stranger said, I've never started with God's name in my entire life, and I'm not going to start now. You can imagine Ibrahim being the second greatest prophet after ours. He's the second greatest. He knows God. He appreciates the compassion and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His generosity. And so it hurts him to see someone not only ignorant of the fact that they need to be appreciative of God's blessings, but is adamant on not mentioning God's name. He was probably an atheist. So Ibrahim, he didn't do much, but he quietly murmured to himself. He said, had I known that you'd be like this, I wouldn't have invited you. The stranger heard what Ibrahim said. He got upset, he was insulted, he got up and left. As soon as he left, the angel Jibreel descends upon Ibrahim. As-salamu yuqri'uka as-salam. The peace conveys his peace. God sends you his blessings. And he says, why did you drive away my servant? Why did you kick him out of your house? Ibrahim said, because he failed to mention your name. So Jibreel says to him, God says, I have fed him for the last 40 years and I've never asked him to mention my name. Once you want to offer him a meal and you expect him to mention my name, otherwise you kick him out of your home? This is the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ilahi, ana alladhi asayt. These are the words of Imam al-Hussein in Dua Arafah. Ana alladhi khalaft, ana alladhi tajarra'at. I was the one who transgressed. I was the one who sinned. I was the one who disobeyed. I was the one who did all these things. وَأَنْتَ الَّذِي عَفَوْتَ أَنْتَ الَّذِي غَفَرْتَ أَنْتَ الَّذِي عَفَوْتَ. And you have been the one who was generous to me despite all of the things that I've done. So, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ means this. God is so generous that He gives to people despite them not mentioning His name. The mere mention of His name, they fail to do that. So now, as a Christian who has seen examples of Jesus, for instance, Jesus is reported to have told his disciples one day that I wish to ask you for a favor. And this is narrated in our own hadith as well, in our own sources. He said that I wish to ask you for a favor. Will you award me the favor? Will you give me what I ask you? They said, absolutely, Ya Ruh Allah, of course. He said, will you give me what I ask you? So he made them make a commitment several times. And he got them to commit to giving him whatever he's asking. They said, sure. He said, all right, I wish to wash your feet. They said, Ya Ruh Allah, you expect us to allow you to wash our feet? How could we do that? Not to you. He said, no, you already gave me your commitment. And so they then sat down and he started washing their feet one after the other. Now why would Jesus do this? He explained it to them afterwards. Number one, he wants to humble himself. This is a continuous training process that the messengers of God and the apostles of God and the prophets and the imams would always subject themselves to. It's not that I'm a prophet now so I get to relax. No, far from it. The prophet receives revelation from God that Allah has forgiven all of your sins. مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْهَا وَمَا تَأَخَّرَ. And so one day his wife says to him, Ya Rasulullah, you've received this revelation from God. Why do you pray so much? Why do you worship God so much? He said, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a thankful servant? God has forgiven all of my sins, right? Do I now sit back and relax and have my fun? No. If anything, this brings me closer to God. If anything, this makes me a more devout, it should make me a more devout servant of God. Unlike some people who go to Hajj, that's it. I'm done with my religion. I've been to Hajj, I'm a Hajj now. I've performed the tawaf and the sa'i and the taqseer and all the sacrifice and everything all the rituals that are performed in Hajj. I'm done. Or they go through the 10 nights of Muharram, we're done. It's the falle, right? So Muharram's gone, let's now go back to the old ways. No. Now that I've gone through Muharram, I need to get closer to Imam Hussein. I need to adopt his morals in a much better way than I've ever done in the past. And so Jesus says that I'm doing this for myself because I wish to humble myself, number one. Number two, I want to act as a role model for you so that when you see me humbling myself before my own disciples, you treat your own people like that, your own followers who will come after I depart, after I'm raised to the heaven, you will also be humble to your people. So there's a lesson there, right? It makes sense. And that's a beautiful example of how we ought to conduct ourselves. So a Christian who has heard this about Jesus suddenly comes across an example like Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. The hadith said that the imam, as they were going towards Kufa, they reach a place where they have access to water. The imam tells his companions to fill up every single canister they have. So they go and they fill the canisters, which makes sense because they're in the middle of the desert and they have a long journey ahead of them. They're going to Kufa. So they begin to fill up. Then the imam says to them, go back to your backpacks, go back to your luggage, go back to what you've brought with you, and look for every possible container that you can find and fill that up as well. So they go, fill it up. The imam tells them the third time, go back and find any vessel that can possibly hold water and fill it up with water. Now, at this stage, it's not making too much sense. Why? Because say they needed 100 liters of water. By that time, they had accumulated over 500 liters. They didn't need this much water. If anything, it became a burden on them because they'd have to carry it all the way. But none of the companions would ever object to the imam. That's the kind of people they were. Again, let me open two parentheses here. I don't want to branch out too much. But the best companions of the Ahlul Bayt were the ones who never objected to their rule. The Imam says, do, I do. He says, don't, I don't. He doesn't say anything, I stop until I receive instructions. An example of that is a man by the name of Himran ibn A'yan, who I believe was the brother of Zurara ibn A'yan, some of the greatest and most noble companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala. The hadith says that they were sitting with the Imam and everyone was discussing a certain thing. I believe it had to do with aqa'id. It had to do with matters of belief. So everyone was engaged in the discussion with the Imam, all in a very courteous, respectful way, of course. But Himran was all quiet. He wouldn't utter a single word. The Imam said to him, Ya Himran, why don't you talk? He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, inni alaytu ala nafsi an la atahaddatha fi mahdarik. I have promised myself not to utter a single word while I'm in your presence. Why would I need to speak? I learn from you. I don't need to offer any feedback. Inni alaytu ala nafsi. So the Imam said to him, لَقَدْ أَذِنْتُ لَكْ تَحَدَّث. It's okay, I give you permission to talk. So even after he receives permission from the Imam, what does he say? He says, إِذَنْ أَعْرِضُ عَلَيْكَ دِينِي. In that case, I will offer you my creed, my beliefs, and I would like you to correct me if I'm wrong. I need your approval and verification. So even when he has permission to talk, he doesn't talk. He talks so that he'd learn. These were some of the companions. Another example, you have people who would come up to the Ahlul Bayt. Again, there are lessons, countless lessons in these little stories and anecdotes. One would come to the Imam and he would say to him, Aslahakallah, As'aluka an fulan wa fulan. May Allah fix your affairs. Right? So that's one way of talking to the Ahlul Bayt. One would say, Hadakallah, may Allah guide you, Ya Sharif. Sharif is a reference that's often used from people outside the Ahlul Bayt school of thought to refer to the descendants of the Prophet. So they'd say, Ya Sharif, Hadakallah, what's your opinion about so-and-so? Well, that's another way. May Allah guide you, he would say to the Imam. But then you had other people who would approach the Imam. For instance, one would want to know who the successor of the Imam is. So they'd come to Imam al-Ridha alayhi salatu wasalam, or Imam al-Hadi, or Imam al-Askari, or any of the infallible Imams. And he would say, إِذَا أَنْتَ رَحَلْتَ فَإِلَى مَنْ يَكُونُ هَذَا الْأَمْرُ. When you're gone, who is your successor? That's one way of putting it. And then again, you have a companion who would say, سيدي ومولاي يا ابن رسول الله إذا كان الأمر الذي نخشاه لا سمح الله ولا أراني الله ذلك اليوم فإلى من. He would say, O descendants of the messenger, if God forbid what I dread were to happen. He doesn't say if you die. He's talking to Hujjatullah ala khalqih. He's talking to God's representative on earth, to the successor of the Prophet. He doesn't say if you die what's going to happen. He says no, if that thing which we dread were to God forbid happen, may I never live to see that day, then who do we turn to? There's a huge difference if you look at the scale of the companions and the followers of the Ahlul Bayt at the lower end of the scale, which include people like me, and then you have people at the higher end of the scale who are just amazing, submissive, and devout individuals who are at the service of their Lord and His representatives. So, moving back to the hadith. The Imam says to his companions, fill up all the canisters. No one objects. No one said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, why all the water? We don't need this. No. إني لا أعلم أصحابا خيرا ولا أوفى من أصحابي. These are the words of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Some people have tried to compare the companions of Imam al-Hussein with the companions of the Prophet, and there is a huge contrast between the two. There's no one better than the companions of Abu Abdullah. إني لا أعلم, I do not know of, and this is the Imam who lived at the time of the Prophet and knows the companions. If we remove the divine knowledge element from the life of the Imam, he knows who the companions were. إني لا أعلم أصحابا خيرا ولا أوفى من أصحابي. ولا أهل بيت أبر ولا أوصل من أهل بيتي. So they fill up the canisters. Then they go and they arrive in Karbala. When they arrive, they greet who? The army of Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, who was leading an army of 1,000 men. 1,000. Did you know that on the day of Ashura, again on a side note, for every one man in the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, there were 500 men on the other side. 1 for 500. So, the Imam, as soon as he sees the army of Hurr, he says, go feed them. Give them the water. So now they realize why the Imam wanted to fill up all the canisters. They go up to them. فَسَقَوْا كُلَّ الرِّجَالِ. They fed every single last one of the men. وَأَرْشَفُوا الْخَيْلَ تَرْشِيفًا. A horse doesn't drink in a very civilized way, right? You feed the horse in a way that there's a lot of spillage, a lot of the water gets wasted. The hadith said that that's how they fed the horses, that's how they quenched their thirst. One of the companions says, one of the troops of Al-Hurr, he says, I was the last person to arrive and I was extremely thirsty. I was so parched, I was about to die. I was the last person to join, and suddenly I noticed Abu Abdullah himself approaching me. فَسَقَانِي بِيَدِهِ. He began to feed me with his own bare hands. ثُمَّ سَقَ الْفَرَسِ. And then he fed the horse. Now, if someone loved his parents, well, that's nice, but that's human nature. We all love our parents. If someone loved his relatives, again, that's human nature. But if someone loved his enemies, no, that's divine. That's not human nature anymore. That is akhlaqullah. تخلقوا بأخلاق الله is to feed your enemies, whom you know will be the ones who deprive you, your family, and even your 6-month-old infant. حتى كان يتلظى عطشا. Only 3 days after that. You know what they're going to do. The Imam knew all along, شاء الله أن يراني قتيلا وشاء الله أن يراهن سبايا. And yet, he goes and he feeds them. So when a Christian says, I wish to embrace the religion of this man, call it whatever you want. This man becomes the center of my universe. He's not abandoning anything. All he's doing is taking his faith and his religion 100 notches upwards, 1,000 levels upwards, by embracing Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Now, while we're on the topic, let's mention this story as well. It is relevant with these nights. Yazid is sitting down. He is called for festivities all over the country. He is celebrating the death of his enemies. ليت أشياخي ببدر شهدوا نزق الخزرج من فرط الأسل لأهلوا واستهلوا فرحا ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تشل لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل نعوذ بالله. He's celebrating, he's making poetry. He really enjoyed his poetry. He enjoyed a couple of things in life. Poetry, monkeys, literally monkeys, alcohol, and playing chess. These 4 things. He loved them. And he'd be sipping on alcohol, giving alcohol to his pet monkey, playing chess, while having the sacred head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in front of him. And he would do other things that I don't want to mention. So then, he had invited some high-level dignitaries and celebrities and people of high stature, VIPs, ambassadors of foreign nations. They were all invited to share in the celebrations. So the hadith says, and this hadith is narrated in Bihar al-Anwar, Al-Luhuf li-Sayyid ibn Tawus, as well as other sources. It said that the ambassador to the Roman Empire, who must have been the highest ranking dignitary present on that day, looks at Yazid and he says to him, would you explain to me, O ruler of this nation, O Khalifa, could you explain to me who this is? Who is this man? who are these women and children? He said to him, هذا رأس الحسين بن فاطمة بنت رسول الله. This is the head of Hussein, the son of Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet. So the Roman ambassador, I believe he knew who this person was, but he wanted some verification. He was so shocked that he wanted to understand and maybe clarify and try to figure out whether he was digesting the information properly. He said to him, are you talking about the grandson of your prophet? He said, yes. He said, this is the head of the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The ambassador to the Roman Empire has a spiritual awakening. All of a sudden he looks at Yazid, subhanAllah, he jeopardizes everything he has. He compromises the position that he holds. He ditches away all the protocols of diplomacy. And he says it like it is. And he presents the truth as it really is by saying, Tabban lakum walidinikum. May God curse you and your religion. This is how you treat the grandson of your own prophet? I am a descendant of one of the disciples of Jesus. Inni min dhurriyyati ahad hawariyi Isa ibn Maryam. I'm not a grandson of Jesus. I'm not a grandson of the disciples. I'm one of the descendants of one of the disciples. And you should see how people honor me and how Christians respect me from my closeness to Jesus. And this is what you do to the grandson of your own prophet? Tabban lakum walidinikum. Yazid was insulted by the ambassador to the Roman Empire in front of everybody. He was so insulted that he said, خُذُوهُ وَاقْتُلُوهُ. Take him and have his head. As soon as they say that, they say that the Christian man threw himself on the sacred head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. فَأَمْسَكَ بِهِ. And then he looked at Yazid. He said to him, now that you've ordered me to be killed, let me tell you something. Last night, I saw a strange dream. In that dream, your messenger, the Prophet, came to me and he said to me, tomorrow you will be joining me. And that's a strange dream because I'm not a Muslim. Why would I be joining him? And it's a strange dream because why would I be joining him tomorrow? Now I know why I would be joining him. Now I know the reason your messenger would want to invite me to paradise. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah wa anna hadha al-Husayn al-Shaheed Waliyullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger and that this sacred head belonging to the martyr Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is the friend of the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, there seems to be a very strange correlation between the Christians of the time and the saga of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, the tragedy of the master of martyrs. And I think these stories really need to get out there. I think people need to learn about these things because I really believe deep down, and I've seen this happen over and over again, how people are embracing the Ahlul Bayt school of thought and the message of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein simply by learning about his tragedy. لو عرف الناس محاسن كلامنا. It's a famous hadith by Imam al-Ridha, who says to one of his companions, he says to him, رحم الله من أحيا أمرنا. May Allah bless the ones who revive our cause, who keep our cause going. So he says to him, وما أحياء أمركم. And how do we revive your cause? He said, يتعلم علومنا ويعلمها الناس. He learns our knowledge and our sciences and from our words and directions, and then he teaches it to the people, to others. And then the Imam said, فَلَوْ أَنَّ النَّاسِ عَرِفُوا مَحَاسِنَ كَلَامِنَا لَاتَّبَعُونَ. If people saw the exquisite nature and the beauty of our words, they'd follow us voluntarily. We don't need to invest hundreds of millions of dollars by publishing books and giving them out in campuses. We don't need to do all the things that other religious schools of thoughts do. All we have to do is present people with the message of the Ahlul Bayt. My father has written a book by the name of Akhlaqiyat Amir al-Mu'mineen. It's one of his most successful books. It's been published over 15 times. He says, I was at the Beirut book fair, and while I was at the booth, this woman came in, not wearing hijab, and she ordered the book. So the fact that she wasn't wearing hijab is not exactly an indication as to whether or not she's a Muslim or not. You know, unfortunately now we have many Muslim women who don't wear the hijab. And he says, I wanted to know more about her, so I said to her, where are you from? She said, I'm from Beirut. Again, there's a mixture of Muslims, Christians, followers of different denominations, the Shia and the Sunnah. They're all in Beirut. So again, it doesn't bring us any closer to knowing what school of thought she subscribes to. And so I said to her, which part of Beirut do you come from? She said, I'm from Junia. So I knew that she was Christian. So I said to her, you're a Christian woman and you're buying this book. She said, do you think that you hold exclusive rights to Ali ibn Abi Talib? هذا حكيم العرب. This is the wise man of the Orient. This is the philosopher of the East and the West. You think he's yours to keep? If only we show the exquisite nature of the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt to the world. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, Wallah al-Ali al-Azim, you will see people flocking to the Ahlul Bayt school of thought. You will see people coming to the light of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in ways that we could never imagine to be possible. We really have failed in this mission. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about myself. We haven't delivered the message of the Imam in a way that is befitting to the scale of his message. We haven't. We really need to keep up. We really need to get out there and tell the world, how many copies of the Maqtal have we published this year in English? The Maqtal, the series of events that unfolded on the day of Ashura. That's all you have to do. I know that in North Africa, I know of cases of people who have embraced the Ahlul Bayt school of thought simply by reading the Maqtal by Al-Marhum Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim Al-Qazwini, one of the prominent reciters and speakers in the holy city of Karbala. He wrote a Maqtal, a very small booklet. People line up to get a copy of this book. They don't have many of them and they're banned. So what happens is they have a few copies and they keep passing them on from one person to another. And they say that we have a success rate of 1 conversion with every person who borrows the book. 100% success rate. Imagine if we were to look at this as a business structure. And yet we're not doing it. We're really not putting an effort in there. Now, to wrap up, when it comes to the message of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, I recited a portion of Ziyarat Ashura, which is recommended, by the way, to be recited every day if you can, to keep the remembrance of Imam al-Hussein no matter where you are. Take the Ziyarah and read it. I know many scholars who recite the Ziyarah every single day in all of its intricate details, which takes about an hour, including dua, the dua that follows, Dua Al-Qamah. They'd read it all, and it takes about an hour. But what it does is that it creates that personal connection between you and the Imam, which is what we need. And so in that portion we say, Inni silmun liman salamakum, wa harbun liman harabakum, wa waliyun liman walakum, wa aduwun liman adakum, ila yawm al-qiyamah. I am at peace with whoever is at peace with you. And I am at war with whoever is at war with you. And I'm a friend to whoever befriends you, and an enemy to whoever seeks animosity with you. In other words, Imam al-Hussein becomes the epicenter of our lives. He becomes the standard. He becomes the gauge. He becomes the scale. He becomes the object with which we compare everything else. When it comes to loving someone, we judge whether this person also loves Imam al-Hussein. If he does, we'll love him. If he doesn't love Imam al-Hussein, then we try to figure out whether he harbors any malice towards Imam al-Hussein. And there are people who do. There are people out there who do. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in certain Arab countries right now, they have giant billboards about the length of this wall that say, Yawm Ashura, Yawm Farahin wa Surur. The day of Ashura is a day of festivities and celebrations. Billboards in the middle of the street. What does that tell you about these people? Other than the fact that they harbor an unexplainable hatred towards Abu Abdullah. And if these people were there on the day of Ashura, where do you think they'd stand? Where would they be? That's a very important question, which I think we should be asking ourselves all the time. Where would I be? And so, when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt, they're not, let me make something very clear. They're not a bunch of messengers. Ahlul Bayt are not a fax machine. Ahlul Bayt are not a mailman who delivers a message to me. No, they're much more than this. Ahlul Bayt to us are role models. Ahlul Bayt to us are examples for imitation. Ahlul Bayt to us are what sets the record straight and sets the enemies from the friends. Let's not joke about this. Let's not kid ourselves. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم. You have people who accept this and make no compromise in their faith, and they are like the companions of the imams. They're like Maytham al-Tammar, who was captured, placed on a tree. He was crucified because of his love for Ali ibn Abi Talib. They began, when you're crucified, you begin to bleed. And when you bleed, you only have a very short time to live. He was crucified because of a declaration that was made. خُذُوهُمْ بِالظِّنَّةِ وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ بِالتُّهْمَةِ لَا وَاللَّهِ إِلَّا دَفْنًا دَفْنًا. We will bury the remembrance of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Take them, apprehend them by accusations, by suspicions. Execute them by accusations, and we will bury every last remembrance of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And so they take Maytham al-Tammar, they crucify him. As he's dying on the cross, on the tree, he then calls out people. He says, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ تَعَالُوا لِأُحَدِّثَكُمْ عَنْ مَوْلَايَ عَلِيِّ ibn Abi Talib. Come, so I could tell you about the virtues of my master, Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's one example. You have examples like Hujr ibn Adi. You have examples like Rushayd al-Hajari. You have examples like Habib ibn Mudahir. You have examples like the companions of the Imam. These are the people who say, Silmun liman salamakum, harbun liman harabakum. And then again, you have people who are different. They're the ones who say, you know what? Let's not get involved in this. As-salatu khalfa aliyin, to pray behind Ali ibn Abi Talib, is better because it's accepted. And then to eat with Muawiyah is better because you get a bigger, better feast over there. With Ali ibn Abi Talib, all he's going to offer you is some dry bread that he would need to use both of his hands to break on his leg. Bread that is spoiled rotten to the point that one companion says, I came to Medina, to Kufa, and I went to the mosque. So Amir al-Mu'mineen saw me there. He said to me, would you like, because I was a stranger, he said to me, would you like to come and join me for food? I said, sure. Obviously, it's better for me to go to the house of the Khalifa than to stay at the mosque where there's no guarantee of anything. So I went to his house. He said the Imam took out his food that was so spiled rotten, آذتني حموضته. He says that the rotten nature of the bread, nausea, it gave me a nausea. And then he'd eat that. So he says that praying behind Ali is good, but when it comes to food, I'm going to go pray behind Muawiyah. And then when it comes between the two of them confronting each other in the battlefield, what do? وَالرُّكُوبُ عَلَى التَّلِّ أَسْلَمُ. Let's not get involved in this. Let's keep a hands-off policy. Let's try and stay safe. Like the guy who used to say, they told him, why don't you go to the battle? You know, the Prophet and the companions are all getting killed over there. And he'd say, you know what, my doctor says that getting killed is not exactly very healthy for you. You're not in a very stable kind of health-wise. You're not doing too well. If you get killed, it might make things worse. And so I'll choose to stay here. And that's what the people of Kufa said, by the way. The people of Kufa said, مَا لَنَا وَالدُّخُولْ بَيْنَ السَّلَاطِينَ. You've got two sultans, you've got two rulers that are trying to fight it out over who becomes the Khalifa. Let them fight it out. We're not going to get involved in this, thinking that Abdullah al-Hussein was there to become the ruler. So you have this type of people as well. You also have a third type of mentality, which is the one that says, you know what, we're all good. Everybody is trying to follow the truth. Everybody is, religious pluralism kind of thing. Everybody's following the truth. We have different versions of it, but ultimately we all end up at the same conclusion. We're all going to heaven, inshallah. Everybody's virtuous, everybody's moral, everybody. Obviously that makes no sense. You don't need the Quran to tell you that doesn't make sense. You don't need the Prophet to tell you that doesn't make sense. You don't need a PhD to figure out that this is an erroneous claim. Yes, we respect everyone. We try to treat everyone with courtesy. We try to engage in constructive dialogue. We put all the cards on the table. We engage with others, yes. But to say we're all right, you can't say that. I remember I went to church and we used to have these interfaith sessions, we'd get several priests and quite a big congregation of Christians, and we'd start the discussions, which was really good and very constructive, if you ask me, because I do think that we got a few to switch over from the other side. But what's interesting is that as soon as we sat down, the priest asked me about what I think about Christians and what's going to happen to them in the day of judgment. I said, that's not my call. I'm not the one who holds the keys to heaven and hell. That's not up for me to say. But then he turned around and said, as for we think you and the Catholics, you're all going to end up in hell. And you know what? I appreciated that, because it broke the ice and it allowed us to understand that this is not one of those sessions where you sit down and exchange pleasantries and say, we love you, you love us, we're all going to go to heaven. No. Let's be serious. Let's be academic and objective about this. So the ones that tell you everybody's going to heaven, everybody's good, again, try to use a little bit of reason. There's a book published in Saudi Arabia. You'll find it in Medina. It's called Aishatul Habiba. Dear Aisha. And in that book, it talks about the Battle of Jamal. And the author says that, well, there were issues with Jamal. It was a fitna, it was discord, it was a time of confusion and mistakes were made and so on and so forth. But then he says that towards the end, listen, the companions are all good, they all love each other. هذا قبر الصحابي الجليل حجر بن عدي. They had this sign on the, up until about 15 years ago. They removed it now because, again, it was a disgrace. But it said that this is the grave of the righteous companion of the Prophet, Hujr ibn Adi, may Allah be pleased with him, who was killed by the righteous companion of the Prophet, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, may Allah be pleased with him. And so in this book, it says that Imam Ali approached Aisha, he told her, أَلَمْ تَسْمَعِي قَوْلَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Stay in your homes. This is a verse of the Quran. So then, the book says that Aisha looked at the Imam and she said to him, غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَنَا يَا بُنَيْ. May Allah forgive all of our sins, O son. Because she's the mother of the believers. And so the Imam becomes her son. And so, oh dear son, may Allah forgive all of our sins. So then the Imam said to her, according to the book, وَلَنَا يَا أُمَّهِ. Yes, may Allah forgive all of us, O mother. And they all lived happily ever after, and they got along really well, even though that war resulted in the deaths of 30,000 Muslims. You explain to me how anybody could live happily ever after, having seen 30,000 lives be wasted in that war. It doesn't make sense. We're all right, we're all good, we're all going to heaven. We need to be a little more careful when it comes to these things. Moving on. And then you have, which is why they say that, you know how some people say, I remember a guy came up and he said, I have this brother, everybody loves him. He has no enemies whatsoever. I said to him, no offense, I know your brother, right? So we're close, which is why I'm saying this. I think your brother is the biggest hypocrite in the world. Because you can't have everybody love you. You can't. If anybody had that status, it would have been our Prophet. And not everyone loved him. It would have been Ali ibn Abi Talib. Not everyone loved him. He said, مَا أَبْقَى لِيَ الْحَقُّ مِنْ صَدِيقٍ. The truth has left me with no friends. Righteousness has left me with... Justice means that you're going to lose people. And so To say that everybody loves me, it means you only tap into what people want to see about you. You only talk to people in a way that makes them pleased about you. So that's hypocrisy. But if you're just and you're righteous and you're going to follow the path of the Ahlul Bayt, you're going to end up with enemies. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. The greatest ulama, the scholars, the prophets, they all had enemies. And so that's the third category. Moving on to wrap up. The fourth category is the people who stand at the opposite end of the scale. The first are the companions. سلم لمن سالمكم حرب لمن حاربكم. The other end of the scale is comprised of the individuals who know what the truth is, who know Ali ibn Abi Talib and yet they fight him, who know Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and yet they fight him, who know, like Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, he says this to Kumail, the narrator of Dua Kumail. He narrates it from Imam Ali. He calls Kumail, he summons him to come to the palace. Kumail comes, there's a whole story behind it. Kumail was in fact summoned. He went into hiding. Then Hajjaj apprehended members of his family, and Kumail came out of hiding in order to save his family members. So he came to Hajjaj. Hajjaj said to him, I know for a fact that in this entire city of Kufa, there's no one better than you, no one more pious, more noble than you, O Kumail. And I know for a fact that there is no one on the face of the planet better than your master Ali ibn Abi Talib. I know that. But here's the problem. You see, I have this fetish, I have this desire to see people rolling in their blood. Nothing personal. I just wish to see you beheaded before my two eyes. He literally said that. Inni uhibbu an arak. I love to see you rolling in your blood, even though I know how good you are. One of his Hajjaj then killed Sayid ibn Jubayr. The last person he killed was Sayid ibn Jubayr. As soon as Sayid walks in, he said to him, Ya Shaqi ibn Qusayr. He reversed the meaning of his name. Sayid means the happy one. Jubayr means the bone splinter. And he reversed it into the miserable bone breaker. Sayid ibn Jubayr looked at him. He said, my mother knew much better than you ever will when she picked that name for me, when she called me Sayid ibn Jubayr. Then Hajjaj said, how would you like to die today? Here's the menu. Take your pick. He said, how would you like to be killed on the day of judgment in retribution for killing me? So I'm not the one who's going to choose how I'd like to die. You choose how you want to die. So Hajjaj was enraged. They said, take him, put him in front of the Qibla and sever his head like a sheep. And so they take Sayid ibn Jubayr and they put him in the direction of the Qibla, and then they sever his head. And that was the last person he killed. Historians say that Hajjaj killed Sayid on a Tuesday. By Friday, he had an excruciating pain in his stomach that would not allow him to sleep for a single second. So they brought a doctor. The doctor tied a piece of meat to a thread. Back then, they didn't have X-ray machines and ultrasound and that sort of stuff. So he took this was an ancient technique. He took a piece of meat, he tied it to a thread, and he had Hajjaj swallow it to get a biopsy, a sample from the stomach. So he then pulled out the meat, and it was covered with maggots and worms. He looked at Hajjaj, he said to him, Awsi wasiyyatak, you're about to die. So then Hajjaj went on the mimbar. He began to cry and cry and cry. And he said, I killed way too many of the Hashemites. قتلت الكثير من بني هاشم. I've killed way too many of the descendants of the Prophet. So his advisor, he looked up and he said to him, you know how sometimes, subhanAllah, there are people who they يبيع آخرته بدنيا غيره, the hadith says. He sells his hereafter in exchange for someone else's material world here, to please someone else over here. So he said to him, La ya Khalifa, or whatever he was called. La ya Amir. No, it's okay. All the people that you killed, we have files. We have all kinds of information to indict them. So it's okay, they deserve to be killed. He looked at his aide. He said to him, if you're the judge on the day of judgment, I won't have any problems. Yes, I'll come up with all these files and we'll sort this out. But what do I do when God, the Almighty, is the judge? And He knows my intention. Within 4 or 5 days, Hajjaj was dead. He knew what the truth was. And the other example of that is Yazid ibn Muawiyah. He's awakened in the middle of the night by the cries of a little girl who was in the ruins next to his castle. طفلة تبكي في خربة الشام يستيقظ هذا اللعين منزعجا من صوتها ومن بكائها. يقول ما هذا؟ يقال له إنها ابنة للحسين استيقظت وهي تطلب أباها تنادي أريد أبي أريد أبي. فقال اللعين خذوا أباها إليها. Take her father to her. Give her what she's asking for. فوضعوا الرأس الشريف في طبق وضعوا عليه خرقة بيضاء. تقوم رقية تنادي عما أين والدي أين أبي. يبدو أن رقية لم تكن قد اكتشفت إلى تلك اللحظة أن أباها قد استشهد، ولذلك يقول المؤرخون أنها في يوم عاشوراء وبعد وقوع الفاجعة جاءهم حميد بن مسلم قدم لهم طبقا من الماء فلم تأخذها فاطمة الكبرى سكينة، قدمت طبق إلى إحداهن ولم تأخذ، قدمه إلى الأخرى فلم تأخذ حتى وصل إلى ابنة الحسين رقية. ففوجئ جميعهم حينما أخذت الطبق، لكنهم وجدوا أنها تمضي إلى نحو ساحة المعركة وهي تنادي أبا 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 لقد أحضرت لك الماء. الإمام الحسين قال هذه الكلمة مرة واحدة في يوم عاشوراء حينما جاءه اللعين شمر بن ذو الجوشن جلس على صدره. يقول الرواية أن الإمام قال وحق جدي رسول الله أنا عطشان، ثم قال لذلك اللعين لقد ارتقيت مكانا عظيما. فأجابه اللعين إني أقتلك وأعلم أنك ابن بنت رسول الله. إذن رقية ما كانت تعلم أن أباها قد استشهد، كانت تسأل عمتها زينب أين أبي، فكانت تقول لها إن أباك في سفر، تعني سفر الآخرة، لكنها في تلك الليلة رأت أباها في المنام فقامت وهي تبكي فانفجر جميعهم بالبكاء. بعث إليها اللعين رأس أبيها يا روع الوديعة وطلعوها هي يا روع الوديعة وطلعوها يا وحرقوا قلبها براس ابوها هي يا وحرقوا قلبها براس ابوها يا جاءوا بذلك الطبق. توجهت إلى عمتها: لم أطلب طعاما، أريد والدي. فقالوا لها: ارفعي هذه الخرقة فستجدين ما طلبتي. ما إن رفعتها إذا صاحت صيحة عالية: أبا 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 والدي، من الذي حز الرأس الشريف؟ أبا أبا أبا، من الذي خضب الشيب العفيف؟ أبا، من الذي أيتمني على صغر سني؟ بكت بكاء عاليا حتى خمد صوتها. تقول زينب: ظننت أنها نامت، وإذا بالإمام زين العابدين يقول: عم زينب، قومي واحملي أختي، فإنها والله فارقت روحها الحياة كمدا وحزنا. هضيمة هضيمة هضيمة، والله هضيمة، يا أنا أصير من زغري يتيمة. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون، والعاقبة للمتقين. إلهنا إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. في الرواية أنه ما من أحد يدعو الله باسمه إلا 10 مرات إلا ويأتيه النداء: لبيك عبدي، سل عما بدا لك. يا الله 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 يا رحمن يا رحيم. عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر، واجعلنا من أصحابه وأعوانه وشيعته ومحبيه والذابين عنه والممتثلين لأوامره ونواهيه. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين. اللهم اقض حوائجنا، أد ديوننا، شاف مرضانا. اللهم بارك لنا في دنيانا وأخرانا. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ومن مات من هذا الجمع نهدي لهم ثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
يا حسين 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 يا حسين.